You're listening to the God Life Culture Podcast, where faith
and what's trending collide. Welcome back to a new episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. This is Eddie.
And this is Miguel.
And thank you once again for tuning in and joining us.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. We are so excited that you are tuned in and that you are ready for this new episode. If you are not subscribed, take a second right now to hit that subscribe button so you can be notified when we drop a new episode. And if you would be so kind, would you please leave us a review? This helps us, put the podcast out in front of more people. It expands our reach, and we will greatly appreciate it. Eddie, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, a little beat up. We did have a snowstorm that did happen. There was a lot of shoveling that I had to do, but regardless, just happy and blessed to have another day of life and just to be here, not only with you, but also our special guest who will be introducing in the next couple of minutes. How's everything over in your world?
Yeah, everything's great. I mean, like you said, we did get the snow this time. I think last time the snow didn't really reach us, right, the way we thought. This time it definitely did. There was a whole lot of shoveling, a whole lot of, slipping and sliding on the ice. But like you said, we made it through. And, it did give us 2 days of a snow day. So, yes. I didn't have to go into school for these 2 days and teach. And, and thinking about all of that, right, of being a teacher and, getting these 2 days off, which was so nice. And, no virtual instruction, no in-person instruction. It was really nice to have a break. But today, and just answering a few emails, I often struggle with concluding the email to my students where I quickly will write Miguel, my first name, Pagan, and then forgetting, like, man, that's like so unprofessional. I have to definitely put, Mr. Pagan. I'm used to the Mr., but sometimes I'll throw in the Miguel in there on accident. But do you ever find it super annoying? Maybe not you, because your name's Eddie, and to mess up Eddie, it will definitely, right? That's a difficult one. But my first name is a name that so many people get mixed up.
Yeah. And
to me personally, I don't think it's that hard to pronounce, but I'll get like Miguel.
Yeah.
I'll get, Miguel, right? They'll make it like me. I'll get Miguel. Like they really want to pronounce every letter in the word. And then my last name, forget it. It goes from, it's definitely Pagan, right? And they'll say pagan, right? Spelling my last name, they add extra letters, they put an O. Like, it's a mess. Like, I one time literally got in the mail, right? It was for me, and they put Miamel. Like, definitely added, instead of a G, it was an M. They added an extra letter. Like, it's just crazy. So, I don't know. I mean, Eddie, it's pretty hard to get that mixed up.
It is pretty hard to get Eddie wrong. But in the Spanish code, like in speaking in Spanish, when they call my name, they call me Eddie. So they don't pronounce the D's. It's Eddie. It's like if it has an R in it. So usually when I get a letter or something written, or somebody's like writing me a note or something, and they write my name, they spell it Eric for some weird reason. So it's like Eric. They think my name is Eric, and it's Eddie. So it doesn't matter. Usually, regardless of it, especially when it comes to different languages, I think that there is always, you run into the risk of people maybe getting your name wrong mistakenly. It's just cultural differences and stuff like that as well.
Right.
But I do think it is important to make an effort to get someone's name correctly, even the way that they pronounce it. Like we have our youngest son, his name's Lucas, but it's spelled Lucas, but his name is Lucas. So we always make emphasis in whoever we speak to, and even for him growing up, to make sure that when he presents himself, his name is not Lucas, it's Lucas. So making sure that he pronounces it is, and it's just something that you go through life very nicely, correcting people, and just letting people know whatever, because it is part of your identity and who you are, and you want people to respect that part of you.
For sure. So, just for clarification, it's Miguel and he is Eddie.
Yeah, not Eddie.
Just, yeah, not Eric. We're so excited today because we have a special guest with us. You guys definitely enjoyed last week's episode and all our guests that have been coming on. We have been hearing great things and how you've been blessed and edified through those conversations. And today we are so excited because we have another special guest with us. So
Yes.
please welcome to the God Life Culture podcast, Kieran Sims.
Woo!
Kieran, can you please say hello
What's
to our
up, guys?
listeners?
Hello, hello, hello. How you guys doing? Thank y'all for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, we're doing well. We're doing well, and we're so excited to have you. Now, listen, you have a unique first name. I mean, even
Yes.
before we got on here, we were like, give us the pronunciation. We just want to make sure we get it correct. I mean, can you, empathize with me a little bit and understand what it is to kind of get that first name mixed up a bit?
100%. I've got everything from Karen to in the second grade. We had a substitute teacher. She called me Corona. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I was like, I'm Corona. How do you get Corona from Kieran? It is what it is.
Right, right.
Now, Kieran, what I would like for you to do is at this moment
Yeah.
speak to our people that are listening who are maybe not familiar with you.
Yeah.
Who is Kieran Sims?
Man, well, I am a first of all, I'm a lover of music, lover of um, food, and a lover of people. Was born in the U.S., born in Baytown, Texas, right outside of Houston, and raised in Trinidad. Been around music
Nice.
all my life, and my great grandmother was she was from Venezuela, so
Nice.
I was born in a house or raised in a household that spoke English and Spanish, and so yeah, I'm an artist. She raised us in church where music, worship leader first, and then artist second, and I consider myself an artist because I just love art and I love all forms of it, and yeah, that's kind of who I am today. I'm a lover of food, though. That's pretty close second. Like that's if you ever see me, I'm always gonna have some food next to me, food and music.
Something to chew on and eat and just make
Yeah,
sure
right.
you're feeling nice and happy.
That's
Now
right, brother.
you do touch on that you are a lover of music and you speak
Yeah,
about how, your great grandmother had a great impact on that becoming a love for you. Can you speak to us a
yeah,
little bit more about that and like really dive into what was it that really cultivate that in you to be a lover of music?
yeah. So my great grandmother, she was super devoted. I was actually raised Catholic.
Mm.
So we didn't have a whole lot of music at church, but we had a lot of music at home. And in Trinidad, everyone has their front door open and everyone's blasting music. So you're competing. You have 5 to 10 competing songs happening in the village. So music was like something we breathe from 6:30 in the morning. You're hearing music till about midnight at night. They're jamming music. So music was always a part, of our culture and of what we did. Um, and then I came here to the States, and I was just basically um, reconnected with my mom, who is a singer. And
Mm.
so then it started, and my sister's a singer as well. So the family first thought my sister was the only singer in the family, her and my mom. And then what they did was they heard me singing "Oh Happy Day" in the shower one day after watching Sister Act, and found out that Kieran can sing too. And
Nice.
so just we went from hearing it all the time to trying it in the shower to then now here it is now I'm singing just like my family now, and it's been around the family all the time. And now I love Caribbean music, and I love I sing in church as well, so that's kind of been the um, from 11 years old to now, I've been just diving into music at church and learning how to just enjoy that, and that's been my connection with God as well. It's a part of who I am, and it's been something that's really God has used really to touch my heart and to bring me closer to Him.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, for those who don't know, you have a lot of music out, in English, but you do have a few Spanish tracks out there. And you've actually worked with, many different Spanish artists that, we know, such as, the group Barack. You've worked with
Yeah,
Evan Kraft. You've worked with Lucia Parker, all
for sure.
amazing, Spanish artists out there. Is
Yes,
there
sir.
anything that you, can share from working with them that you specifically learned from them or were impacted? Maybe it's just a
Yeah.
moment in the studio, or a moment just where they told you or gave you a word of advice that you hold dear to this day.
Yeah. So I'll say this with Evan. I love the fact that he's white, but has a heart for Latin. And I didn't know until I met him. That's crazy. I know a lot of people not know that he's white. Like some people don't know that, but
Right, right.
he's white. But he has a heart for Latin America, and what he taught me was to do what you love to do, but also create resources or translate resources for the people you love as well, so they can partake in your gift and your journey in your song with you. With Lucia, she's just a powerhouse vocalist, and she taught me how to just be myself and how to just be as artistic as possible and not shy away from who I am, but show every expression, English and in Spanish. And then Barack, oh my God, those guys are just worshipers. They go after the heart of God. In their music, they're not afraid to just go in. And I think that's
Yeah, man.
and Robert's a phenomenal vocalist. So I really connected with him because I always thought like if I ever were to just really pursue music in Spanish, those guys I look up to them a lot because they don't compromise their sound. Um, Even when they're going for broke and they're going straight for the heart of God, but they're
Yeah.
still really good. So they don't compromise quality either. Those moments where you're just kind of going for it, and that's kind of what I learned. I learned how to be to be artistic, but also just go after God's heart. And
Yes.
one thing that I've learned with those guys is that they've learned how to create a space in Spanish music where people can just they give words to people's song and give words to people where they're able to worship God freely. And
Yes.
that's what I want to do. Like with my life and with my music, I want to create a space where people can just go for it, the ugly cry, and
Yeah,
enjoy God's
man.
presence.
Yeah, which is the ultimate goal, I would
Yes.
feel that,
Yes, sir.
when it comes to being a worshiper in whatever
Yeah.
genre it is, that you do
Mhm.
want to create an environment where people are not just enjoying your music, but also
Yeah.
enjoying being in the presence of the Lord,
That's
because there's
right,
been
bro.
plenty of times where, I'm jamming in my car at home and, it's a worshipy song that has me like crying, the ugly cry. And then there's other times where it's an upbeat bop that has me, like yo, like feeling the Lord's presence, but it's still a
Yeah.
bop. Like I'm still like,
That's
feeling
right.
joy and happiness and all
That's
that
it,
great
bro.
stuff. So it is important, regardless of the genre, that as
Yeah.
worshipers, we do take people into a place of connectivity with the Lord.
Yes.
Before we jump off the whole Spanish thing, I did want to ask a question to you, which is, do you feel a difference when you worship in Spanish versus worshiping in English?
Oh man, I do. I would say, be honest with you, I do. Here's why. I just feel like, first off, the language is gorgeous, and the culture is amazing. But I feel like, man, like when I'm in Latin America, I just feel like people don't care about anything but the presence of God.
Yeah.
Like there, it's like they go straight for God's heart, and I think that inspires me in a whole nother level because man, it just they keep the main thing, and
Hmm.
that's been my heart. Like I've experienced that. I'm like, man, sometimes here in the States, some people just have their, we have our 15-minute, 20-minute worship sets, and we're moving forward, and that's okay. It has its place as well. But I feel like, man, in Spanish, there's just a whole nother side of it. And then when it comes to even in the studio and you're tracking your music, I just feel like it opens up a whole nother world because you can say
Hmm.
things in so many different ways. And yeah, it's definitely different, and I enjoy it a lot.
Awesome.
That's awesome. I mean, I was introduced to your music, a few years back when Lucia Parker was actually working on one of your songs with you. You guys were like
Oh man.
collaborating. I believe it was Every Promise and like translating it, I believe.
Yeah.
And I
Oh,
remember her being on live and everything. And I remember just hearing this song and being like, man, these lyrics are amazing. And that was
wow.
like a few years back. And that was like, when I was first introduced to your music. So
Wow.
I also think that just that aspect of, when you collaborate with these people and,
Mm,
these people of different cultures and
yeah.
backgrounds, you're definitely introduced to their world, right? And
Wow.
you're introduced
Yeah.
to, their people. And I
Yeah.
just think that that's amazing, right? There's
It's
room
like,
for everyone. We all
yeah.
offer different things. And,
Mm,
like I said, that song, Every Promise, even to this day, is just still a song that I resonate with so
wow.
much. And I think it's in my opinion, from what I see, I think it's one of your biggest songs. Correct?
Yeah.
Correct me if
Yes,
I'm
sir.
wrong.
It is. It
Yeah,
is.
Every Promise. And for me, it's definitely something I can relate to. I
Wow.
know you have been open, about your health and
Yeah.
your struggle with ulcerative colitis.
Yes, sir.
And for me, the part that I definitely relate to is, I've struggled with diabetes for many
Mm,
years,
yeah.
since the age of 13. And, that was a really big, challenging moment in my life. And going into that, right, like, experiencing this and trying to journey through it, I
Yeah.
remember vivid moments where God spoke healing over my life and
Mm,
promised healing. I
yeah.
remember traveling specifically to like Dominican Republic, where no
Yeah.
one knew me
Yeah.
and no one knew who I was, and this individual just like prophesying and telling me and declaring healing over
Mm,
this sickness that I had, that again nobody knew about in that moment.
yeah.
um and time has passed. I mean, that was 13, I'm 27 now. It's been
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah.
And I definitely can relate to the idea of believing in God's promises and holding
Yeah.
on to them, but
Yeah.
sometimes just being tired, right?
Yeah.
Tired of
Yeah.
waiting and just in that struggle. So your song Every Promise definitely
Mm,
brings all those emotions and feelings,
wow.
to light for me. And you've explained and you have this whole story that I really do want you to get into about,
Yeah.
when you were diagnosed and, leading up to that. And then, even about a worship moment you had in Dallas one night while you were ministering. Can you just
Yeah.
speak a little bit about that story and, the feeling of, feeling that God has maybe forgotten about his promises and that
Yeah.
struggle?
Yeah. I definitely will. Yeah. I remember there was a time I was having, just a lot of stomach problems and little complications. And, it was getting to the point, and I'm an athlete. I played basketball, played football. So I was healthy for a lot of my life. And, until I had just like a stomach virus, that I ate something and it was just, oh, it'll pass. It'll be fine. Well, it became a month that passed, and the symptoms weren't going away. And I had um I had gone to the doctor, actually several times, and they were like, "Man, we don't know what it is." Well, I think it was a fourth time. They were like, "Okay, we're just gonna go in and take a look. And they did that, and I remember the day they went in to take a look. I heard God speak to me so clear, and He said, "Key, you're not gonna have this forever." And it I was like, okay, like I didn't really think too much of it, because I knew, okay, 'cause I was a little fearful. I'm not gonna lie to you, I was a little fearful, but I just heard God say that, and I was assured. Well, 3 days later, when we got the results, they said, well, Key, you have ulcerative colitis, and this is something that you're gonna have forever. It's incurable. And I remember on that same weekend having an engagement where they wanted me to come in and with my team and to lead worship at a church anniversary. Well, we went to Dallas, and we went to do the night of we did the service, and it became a night of worship. And it became, at the end of the night, the pastor got the microphone. He was like, "Man, I just really feel like God wants to do some healing here in the room." And
Mm.
he began to pray for people, and people were getting healed in the room. I was blown away, and it wasn't the first time I was seeing that. However, I was really blown away that God was moving in that moment, and I
Yeah.
thought it was going to be my moment. I was like, "Yeah, you're okay." I was excited about it, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen that day, and I remember having a decision. I had to choose between um, am I gonna be discouraged? And am I gonna go back to um, am I gonna go back to a place where I don't trust God? I don't believe Him to do what He said He's gonna do, or am I gonna lean into what He said? Because I know without a shadow of a doubt what He said to me. And I remember just singing like, I believe you are who you say you are. I believe every promise. And I remember just singing that to myself in a corner and of the same room while everything was happening. And I believe you've come to heal my heart. I believe it's already done. And I remember just kind of having that in my heart. And we I get in the car and my guitarist name is Morgan. He was like, bro, like, are you good? Like, yeah, man, but I got a song. And I remember just showing him the song. And on the way back from Dallas to Houston is about a 3.5 hour drive. And I remember I finished the song that night on the way home, and just was in a place where I felt God's presence and His nearness. And there was a moment where I almost stopped believing His promise, but then I
Mhm.
realized I'm in God's presence right now. And
Yes.
he's never been more near. Or I've never experienced him more near than I do now. And man, you promised never leave me nor forsake me. You promised that you'd heal me. So you're a man of your word. Also, you're here with me, and that changed everything for me in that moment. So every promise has been an anthem of my life as well since that moment, and it's reminded me that God can still do what He said He will do,
Yes.
especially because He's still here with us today.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. Can you speak to the person right now who is awaiting, for God to fulfill his promise in their life, and
Yeah,
they're waiting, and they grow impatient, and
yeah.
it just seems like maybe things get worse. How do you
Hmm.
deal with those bad days, right, where
Yeah.
we know what truth is, we know that
Mhm,
God will come through and that God has a last word, but
mhm.
what do you do when you have those hard days where you are sick, or you're feeling all the symptoms, or it's not getting better? What do you do?
Yeah, I'd have a moment where I look back I take a moment, and when things are bad or whack in a moment, I look back on when things were amazing. I look back on those strong days where I didn't feel the symptoms, or I wasn't in a hospital. And I had a moment where, you know what, it was okay. Or I remember those moments when I was in God's presence and nothing else matters. And I look back over my life, and I see God in every chapter of the story. And I think that was has been the what's held me together. Even some of my roughest days, I've things have been a little crazy recently as well. We're still going through the journey, But what's
Right.
helped me together, what's encouraged my heart was the fact that he's been there up until now. So if he's been there, and you can look back and you can see him, and things could have been a lot worse, the days where could have been worse, or the days where he got you through it, then I believe he'll get me through it today. And that's kind of been what's encouraged me today, because he's been faithful then, and he's gonna be faithful now. He'll be faithful forever, and not in this weird
Amen.
Christianese cliche way, but like in such a real way. Like, he's so near. And so in those moments, I lean in a little bit more, and I thank him for breath, because it could be worse. There are moments where I didn't have to be here. There are moments where symptoms or circumstances were so bad where I could have been gone to heaven, but God had a purpose for my life, and if there's still a pulse, there's a plan. So I realized, okay, well, God wants to use this for something, and He didn't give this to me, but He allowed it for a reason, and He's going to do something with it. So I think about the people who maybe need to hear our stories, and maybe they need to be encouraged. So I think about those people. It stops being about me in those moments, and I realize, man, God endured so much more for me. He's in it, enduring it with me today. And think about so many people, the people out there that need to be inspired to continue enduring and pushing through, because if He promised it, He's faithful to complete it.
For sure, man. I mean, and again, I just want to personally thank you, for being obedient and writing that song, for pushing through, because it's definitely, at least, in my life, has been, like you said, an anthem of just, clinging and believing to God's promises. So definitely
Amen.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
And one of the great things that I find about your testimony is the realness of it. Because you hit on the word Christianese, I think, before,
Yeah.
and I think that a lot of times in our church lingo,
Yeah.
it's very easy to make something serious seem like very like I was gonna say peaches and cream for some reason, but I don't know, like very sweet, like very like whatever. And Miguel and I have had these conversations,
Yeah,
off the air with ourselves, with our wives. The
yeah,
idea of the difficultness of that, of understanding God's faithfulness, believing in His promise, even though in the moment you don't feel like it,
yeah, bro.
and how you really do have to like tighten your bootstraps
Yeah,
and like make the active decision to be like, no, I believe it. No, I'm going to
yeah.
continue to move forward. No,
That's it,
there's
bro.
a reason, if like you said, if there's a pulse, there's a purpose. So there
Yeah,
has to be something, there has to be a part of the bigger picture, and asking
yeah,
God to help me, tune in to what that bigger picture is.
yeah,
One of the lyric, there's this video that's on YouTube where you're speaking about your testimony. You share your story about the diagnosis. You also
yeah,
share your situation with your father and that whole
yeah,
situation,
yeah.
of having that, those feelings and those difficulties of growing up and feeling like maybe there's a piece that is missing, and
Mm,
maybe there's something that you feel cheated on,
yeah,
and that's something that I relate with as well. And especially once my wife and I, my wife was having our first baby, which happened to be a son. One of
yeah.
the fears I had was that of how am I going to deposit in my son something that I didn't receive growing up, because I
Mm,
didn't have that.
yeah.
But you speak on how you had a moment with the Lord, and
Hmm.
how, He kind of like had to put you, like to realize like, hey, I've been that father for you.
That's
Can you
it.
speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, man. There was a time I was right out of high school. I think I was 18 or 19, and I was at a point where my dad's been off and on drugs all my life, and so I had hardly any relationship with him. And the little relationship I did have with him was good. Mom never spoke bad of him, and she
Mm-hmm.
always encouraged us to respect him and love him. And so when he was out, he was dad. We seen
Yeah.
him at my grandma's house and all the above. But then I realized, like, man, I got tired of him not being at my basketball games and at my football games. And I had a moment where this guy was, I mean, he's known here in Houston of being one of the fastest guys and one of the coolest athletes of his time, like great athletes of his time. But I never got to experience that. And I remember I was bitter. I was bitter. I was hurt. I felt abandoned, a little confused. And I just like, dude, like, why can't you get your act together? And I remember 18 or 19, graduating and trying to figure life out. And I remember, but pursuing God's heart and really like saying yes for real in that time. And I remember there was a time we were at my friend's apartment and we were worshiping. And I had an encounter with God. And like it was like a moment where like I could like similar to what I talked about with every promise when God I heard God speak to my heart in such a real way that shook me to my core. And it was one of those things where like you're not going to have this forever, and how here I am 4 years later I still remember loud clear as day. It's still loud in
Mm-hmm.
my spirit as it was that day. Well, that happened in that moment. That was one of the first times that happened. And um, he said, "Key, I want you to forgive your dad." And
Yeah.
I was like, I mean, like I don't know how to really do that, but I just really feel like God was just kind of saying that to release him, and I did. I began to just like I forget my dad, I forgive him, and I remember in that moment feeling like literally this weight fall off my heart and off my shoulders and off my chest. And I really felt myself like, and I know it's like hard to describe that in Christianese, but I
Right.
really just felt lighter. Like I felt lighter and I felt like I wasn't carrying this anchor that I've been carrying, dragging through my life. And I felt God speak to me. It's like, "Key, I was the one at your basketball games." Like he knew exactly what to say in that moment to reshape my reality. And he was like, "Key, I was at your basketball games, man. I was at your football games. I was there. Your choir recitals. I'm in your choir. I've been there. I always will be." And I remember in that moment, it changed my entire perspective on God. And then it's crazy like we're talking about this because even when 4 years, I would say 6 years later when that happened, um, when I happened, I got diagnosed, and hearing God's voice again say that, I realized, man, like He knew exactly how to speak to me and where to speak to me to get my attention and to show me
Yeah.
that he was so for real about me, and that changes the game for me because, man, like if God will speak to me in a way that catches my attention, like in a world where it's so loud and doubt can be louder than anything that we feel, fear can be louder than anything else, or truth sometimes. But when God can come in and in a moment change your entire perspective, man, that hands down, I would live my life forever worshiping
Right, right.
and giving Him back the praise and glory.
Yeah. I mean, and that's something that, every listener, we can definitely take that, with us. The idea that God still speaks, that
Yeah,
God, still comforts, God still gives us peace. And, it's funny because I do struggle with that whole Christianese language, right? Where it's like
yeah,
you want to say something, but that really is the way to describe it, right? Like in
yeah,
God's presence is everything we need, right? Or
yeah,
He spoke to my heart. And, yes, there are people that may overuse that terminology or may call it Christianese, whatever, but it's reality, it's
that's
truth.
it. That's it,
God
bro.
does speak to our hearts. In His presence we do find everything we need. He
Yeah,
is good and good all the time, right? So it's just
yeah,
important for us, to keep that in mind,
yeah.
especially in these crazy times we're living in.
That's right.
2020 has been crazy. We know
Mhm.
this pandemic, it kind of seems like it's just like not wanting to leave. And, with everything going on in
Mm.
the midst of, a crazy year last year, you
Yeah.
did release your latest album, Better With You, and you
Yes.
released it in November.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious to know, what was the songwriting process and arrangement like, for that album, given the context of the crazy year that 2020 was, with the
Yeah.
pandemic, with just being quarantined and not being able to maybe leave your home for the way you did before. What did that
Mhm.
process look like for you?
So, with all that was happening, I still kind of found myself. I found myself in hospital, in and out of the hospital at times.
Wow.
Found myself going, um, still having. So I'm on chemo now at the moment. Trying to get ulcerative colitis in remission. So
Wow.
at those visits and at those different moments, I just really like I would get songs and I'd have like these anthems that would just rise in my heart, and I'd get these lyrics or melodies, and I'd freak out because I'm like, wait a minute, like I don't know where this song's coming from, but I have to get my voice memo, and I have to record this right now, and I have to get around one of my friends. We have to finish this song. But that's when I got those songs in some of my toughest moments of my life, and I the bow that I put on it was Better With You because yes, it sucks right now. Like you never promised that life was going to be easy, but you make it better, and
Yeah.
you make the best out of every situation that I'll ever find myself in. God, that's the prayer of this project. So in the last year and a half, we recorded it about, I would say, about a year and a half ago, but this entire time, um, that's I mean I've been in and out of the hospital. I would say the last couple of years, and these songs all came from that place. And when we were able to on the project, you're able to hear some of the recorded stuff, and then some things are recorded later on, which is the live stuff. We did
Right.
some of the live project that we did. So we were able to do some at the before the pandemic, and then the rest of it when the pandemic hit. And man, it's just all together. We were able to grab some of those things together, those experiences, those emotions from some of those real places, and yeah, and create Better With You.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's when the most powerful art, right, is created. The most powerful worship kind of comes through in
Mm,
your toughest moments. One of my
yes,
personal favorite songs. I mean, you do have Every Promise on this album, and you actually have it featuring Leland Mooring,
yes, sir.
which is amazing. But you also have this other song on there that I love called Love Song. You have it in
Oh,
English, you
bro.
have it in Spanish, Canción de Amor.
Yes, sir.
Where did that song come from? Like, how was that song birthed?
That song came out of, we were in San Antonio at Cornerstone Church, and we were doing their youth ministry that night. And I remember it was a night of worship, and I remember something happening in the room that night where those kids were like just on their face and hands lifted, just ugly cry all over the room, and just going for it. And I was just like, oh my god, I love the worship culture here. But not only that, they were hungry, And I remember, but I also remember, it's so weird, but I remember like not feeling good that day. So not even being able to go to sound check, but having a moment where I realized, man, this is worth coming, and this is worth um, being a part of, because I mean, I almost canceled this trip, but I'm so glad I came, and I'm so glad my band's here, and I'm so glad these kids are engaged and God's presence is here. And I remember just having a moment of gratitude, and the chorus and the bridge came, just spontaneous worship in that moment. And I remember right after that, going back to the hotel and staying up till 5 in the morning, finishing the verses, and just having a moment where there's praying happening, people were reading scripture, and it was just a God moment and a moment of gratitude, and just saying, God, like your love is the air I'm breathing, the very song I'm singing, and your every word I'm leaning, I just can't get enough. And that's a prayer, that's a cry of my heart as well, because it's His strength that keeps me going each and every day. It's His love for me that honestly, we're all borrowing the breath of God, and I'm just giving it back
Yes.
to Him. And so that was like kind of just the heart behind that song. That's where that song originated from. And yeah,
And I think it's quite two things. One that I think that is great is the idea of how worship and like true worship that comes and pours out from the heart is so contagious,
yeah,
and has a ripple effect, because how many of us haven't found ourselves in a situation where we didn't want to go to church that Sunday, or we didn't want to go to that youth group, or we didn't want to go to do
100%.
whatever, and we're like, oh, I just showed up because I have to. And
Yes.
then you get enraptured in
Hmm.
everything that's happening around you, and how the presence of God is just really like so tangible
Yeah.
that you just find yourself with no other choice but to join in. You find
Yeah, bro.
yourself, feeling refreshed, feeling renewed, feeling restored, feeling given strength, and all that great stuff.
Yeah.
So it's great how it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we need that as well. We need to
That's right.
appear at a place, and feel that, and to be uplifted that way as well. You have recently, when you were promoting your album, you said new album also means new merch.
Yes.
And I was just curious, how involved are you in the creative process of the merchandise that you have?
Man, so right now, I love clothing. I love fashion, and so I'm very involved in that process. I didn't want to just do merch that was, oh, that's just concert merch, but I wanted to create clothing and partner with designers to create clothing that people would be proud to wear, and
Yeah.
quality that people would be proud to wear. They wouldn't just wear it to paint the house in. They won't wear it just to go to sleep in, but it would be a fashion statement to, of course, remind them of God's faithfulness, but also have a heart behind what you wear. And
Yes.
so I really am involved in the process. I put together the mood boards, and I speak heavily um, into that whole process. And I really we're working on actually a new clothing line, a clothing line
Nice.
from our merch. Just it's a higher level, I would say, just a step higher in quality. There we
Yes.
go. Words are hard today. A step higher in quality, and we're gonna it's gonna actually gonna be a line, and instead of just doing merch, I'll be doing collections that will bow or nod to the album I'm doing or a project that I'm doing,
Nice.
and just to really give myself over to that, because I really love clothing and I love fashion, and I wanted to create something that people would, like I said, be proud to wear, but also, man, it's quality stuff.
Not only quality, but it also, I feel like from what I see, you are a very fashionable dude. So
Thanks,
it
man.
is something that is also part of you as well. So
Yes,
it's like a passion project, something
yes,
that you
sir.
genuinely find interest in and just
Yeah,
want to share with the world. Now,
yeah,
you
yeah.
shared with us, you just finished an album, you're releasing a fashion line very soon. Are there any other projects that we can be looking forward to seeing in the near future
Oh
that you can
man,
share
so
with us?
I definitely can. So right now we're working on Mejor Contigo. We're gonna do some
Yes,
songs in
Yo,
yes.
Spanish. Estamos muy emocionados. We're excited
right.
about that, and so we're getting ready to knock that out soon, and have some of the people we mentioned featured on some of the songs, and I'm crazy excited about that. I've gotten to partner with some really cool artists and write more songs for the project because some of them don't translate as well, but also translate some of the songs and partner and collab with some of the artists. So I'm
Awesome.
excited.
Yeah, I mean, and translating is a whole different world of itself. Some
Yes,
people
you
just think
know,
like you can just translate anything.
yeah,
You have to count syllables, and
yes,
you may have to change the word and all
yes,
of
sir.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a whole thing. Kieran, can you please tell our listeners where they can find you on social media, where they can find your music, give them all that information.
Yeah, so I'm at Kieran Music. That's Keerron Music. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. Um, I'm on Twitter, and also you can visit KieranMusic.com for more music merch, and we're working on music this year, so you just get updates as well from our site.
Nice. Now, Karen, we have one more question for you. But
Sure.
before we get to the final question, we wanted to know, is there anything in your heart that you feel like sharing with our listeners at the moment? Could be anything, something funny, something powerful,
Yeah,
whatever it is that you feel at the moment to share. What would it be?
I would say this: never stop dreaming, and what I mean by that is each and every one of us, we're all a dream from God, I believe. And when at the very beginning of the foundation of the earth, we're all in the mind of God, in the heart of God. And when God spoke each and every one of us into existence, He had a plan and a dream for our lives. And but we came from His heart, we came from His imagination. So I would say, never stop using your imagination and your heart. And when you see those things in your heart and your imagination, go for it because God put it there, and God intends to back you up. So if you're passionate about something and you feel like God's really on your heart to do it, do it. God's gonna make it happen. Don't worry about the resources. God's gonna provide as long as you stay close to Him. You submit it to His will. He's gonna position you, and He's gonna open up the doors that needs to be open. He'll provide the resources, and He'll keep your heart on fire if you stay close to it.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And since this is called the God Life Culture Podcast, we have one last question that
Yeah.
you can take just about 30 seconds to answer, right?
Yeah.
And it's basically, how is God using your music to impact your own life and impact the culture around you?
He's using my music to remind me of His faithfulness, of His goodness. He's reminding me of the promises He made, but also my response to the promises He's made. And sometimes we forget what we said to Him, and how we felt in a moment towards Him. So in a moment where I'm frustrated or upset, sometimes I may put on a song that I wrote that said, "God, you're amazing," and it reminds me of His goodness, reminds me of His faithfulness. And but also my friends and family, they look at my life and they're able to see God moving in it. They're inspired, and they are allowing this to also challenge them to dig a little deeper. And we're all growing and learning together because it is tough. But once you have the right people around you, and we're all inspired at the same time, there's nothing we can't do with God's help and the right people around us.
Amen, man. We just want to thank you for being a part of this episode, for speaking and being open and transparent.
Amen.
I know that each of these listeners are definitely being blessed by this conversation. And if you were blessed by this conversation and you're listening to this podcast, definitely go and stream his music, support his music ministry, and be subscribed and up to date to everything that he is doing.
Yeah, so that means find him on YouTube, find him on Spotify, find him on Apple Music, Google
Yeah.
Play, whatever it is that you use. Find him, download, purchase his music,
Yes.
and follow him because he has a lot of great things that are in the works. He already has a lot of great things out. He has even better things that are about to come out. So you definitely want to be able to take part of that and be blessed by it and bless him back in return.
Yeah. So again, thank you, Karen, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure, and I was really blessed by it. Thank you, guys.
Amen. And to our listeners, definitely subscribe if you are not subscribed so you can get notified when we drop a new episode, and that friendly reminder to leave a review. We love reading all of your reviews, and that puts us in front of more people to expand our reach, and we are super grateful for that. You can follow us on Instagram at God Life Culture Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, and definitely stay connected so you can see all the great conversations and great things that are ahead.
So once again, we want want to thank you for tuning into the God Life Culture podcast. That's
God Life Culture.
Until next time.
See ya.
Bye.